In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt drove out to a hill in southeastern Turkey that the locals called Potbelly Hill. Other archaeologists had walked over the same hill in the 1960s and decided it was a medieval cemetery. Schmidt looked at one of the stones poking out of the ground for about 10 minutes, and then he sat down and said, out loud, to nobody, "This changes everything." He was right. What he was looking at was 11,600 years old. It is older than agriculture. It is older than pottery. It is older than the wheel. It is older than writing by 7,000 years. And we have absolutely no idea who built it. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish that means belly hill or navel hill. From a distance it looks like nothing, a low, rounded mound rising out of a dry plain about 12 kilometers from the city of Sanliurfa. There are limestone outcrops everywhere in this region. For 10,000 years, farmers plowed around this one and never thought to ask why a hill in the middle of flat country was so suspiciously round. What is buried inside it, we now know, is at least 20 enormous stone-ringed enclosures, arranged in circles, each one anchored by a pair of T-shaped limestone pillars in the center. The biggest pillars stand 5.5 meters tall. They weigh up to 20 tons. They are decorated, in deep relief, with carved animals, foxes, scorpions, vultures, leopards, snakes, wild boars. Some of the pillars have arms. They have hands, with long fingers, folded across the front, as if the pillar itself is a person. A very tall, very thin, very stylized person with no face. Here is what makes this site break history. Carbon dating from organic material in the lowest layers gives a date of around 9600 BC. That is the moment, give or take, when the last ice age was ending. There were no cities yet. There were no farms. The people who carved these pillars and dragged them into place were hunter-gatherers. They lived in tents or in lean-tos. They followed herds of gazelle. The orthodox view of human history, the one that was taught in every textbook for 100 years, said that this was impossible. You needed agriculture first. You needed surplus food first. You needed a settled population first. Then, and only then, could you get people organized enough to build monuments. Göbekli Tepe is the textbook getting things in the wrong order. Imagine the labor. To quarry one of those 20-ton pillars from the limestone bedrock with stone tools alone takes, by experimental archaeology estimates, about 500 person days. Then you have to move it, on log rollers and ropes, across hundreds of meters of broken ground, and you have to stand it upright in a precision-cut socket without breaking it. You need hundreds of workers. You need to feed them. You need to coordinate them. You need somebody to be in charge. And you need to do all of this without being able to write down a single instruction, because writing has not been invented yet, and will not be invented for another 7,000 years. There is a second strange thing about Göbekli Tepe, and it might be stranger than the first. The builders, at some point, deliberately filled the whole site in. They backfilled every enclosure, layer by layer, with dirt and rubble, until the entire complex was buried under the hill that is its name. They did this carefully. They did it on purpose. And we do not know why. Klaus Schmidt called Göbekli Tepe the world's first temple. He believed the people who built it came from across the region, possibly hundreds of kilometers away, to gather for religious ceremonies. The carvings, in his view, are not decoration. They are theology. The animals are not the prey of the hunt. They are spirits, or ancestors, or symbols of something we have lost the language to read. Schmidt's most famous claim is that the temple came first, and the village came after. People did not settle down to farm and then build a temple. They built a temple, and the labor of building it forced them to invent agriculture so they could feed the workforce. God, in this telling, did not come from civilization. Civilization came from God. That is a beautiful idea. It is also still being argued about. Since Schmidt's death in 2014, newer excavations led by Lee Clare and others have complicated the picture. They have found evidence of permanent dwellings at the site itself, small, oval houses tucked between the great enclosures. Göbekli Tepe might not have been a pilgrimage site that nobody lived at. It might have been a town with extraordinary public architecture, the way Athens had the Acropolis. The line between temple and city, in other words, might be the wrong line to draw. Here is what we know. We know hunter-gatherers, at the end of the last ice age, in what is now southern Turkey, organized themselves at a scale and complexity that nobody thought was possible at that date. We know they were obsessed enough with whatever they were doing to drag 20-ton stones across miles of hill country with their bare hands. We know they did this for at least 1,500 years, building enclosure after enclosure, and then they stopped. We know the climate was changing. We know the megafauna they hunted was disappearing. We know that within a few thousand years of Göbekli Tepe being built, the very same region, the Fertile Crescent, was the place where wheat was first domesticated, where sheep were first kept, where the village became the world's basic unit of life. None of that is a coincidence. We just do not know which way the causation runs. Here is what we do not know. We do not know what language they spoke. We do not know what they called themselves. We do not know what the carvings mean, beyond the obvious, that vultures are circling, that scorpions are crawling, that foxes are running. We do not know whether the T-shaped pillars are gods, ancestors, priests, or something we do not have a word for in any modern language. We do not know who was allowed inside the enclosures and who was kept out. We do not know what was sacrificed there. We do not know if anything was sacrificed there. The carvings include not a single human figure that is plainly human. Just stylized abstractions. Whoever they were worshipping, or remembering, or fearing, they did not look like us. And here is the part that gets me. Less than 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have mapped at least 16 more enclosures still buried under the hill. There are similar sites, Karahan Tepe, Sayburk, Bonkuklu Tala, being unearthed across the same region right now. They are all roughly the same age. They are all built by people who, according to the old textbooks, did not exist. There is something in the ground in southeastern Turkey that is rewriting the first chapter of the human story, and the excavation will not be finished in our lifetime. Maybe not in our grandchildren's lifetime. Each season produces a new pillar, a new carving, a new question. We used to tell ourselves a clean story. First we farmed. Then we settled. Then we built. Then we worshipped. Göbekli Tepe says we worshipped first. Or it says the categories themselves are wrong. Or it says the people who came before us were already, in some way we are still struggling to recognize, fully and completely human, capable of organizing labor on the scale of a small army, capable of imagining gods, capable of inventing public architecture, all without leaving us a single word to explain themselves. That is the story of the temple that should not exist. If you like history that turns the textbooks upside down, subscribe to Chamedia. New story every week.